It happened the night of our company's winter gala in downtown Chicago. Thursday night, late December. One of those overly polished, expense account soirees where everyone pretends to like each other while silently judging who's drinking too much or cozying up to the wrong VP. It was held on a rooftop of a boutique hotel in River North. Fake fireplaces, sleek jazz trio, cocktails with names like Maple Gold Rush. I wore the same navy suit I always wore. Haley wore a deep emerald dress, satin, with a slit that stopped just shy of provocative. She looked beautiful. She always did. And I remember thinking, as we posed for a photo near the balcony, we've still got it. I couldn't have been more wrong. The night dragged the way these things always do. Speeches, awards, toasts. Everyone clapping for the regional manager who hit their targets. Everyone pretending the chicken roulade was anything but bland. I made polite conversation with the usual suspects, sipping at a whiskey I didn't even want. Haley floated between groups like she belonged to all of them and none of them. She laughed a little too loud, flirted just enough to raise eyebrows, but not alarm bells. Still, I thought nothing of it. She was charming. She liked attention. I chalked it up to open bar confidence and figured we'd Uber home a little drunk and maybe fool around like we used to after weddings. That fantasy shattered just before midnight. I was talking to a junior partner when I caught sight of her near the coat check. She wasn't alone. Trevor Hastings stood beside her, tall, silver-streaked, perpetually tan. He joined the firm a few months ago. Sales guy, charming in a rehearsed kind of way. The kind who compliments every woman and looks every man in the eye just a second too long. I never liked him. Haley always said I was imagining it. They were close. Too close. Her arm hooked through his. Their heads leaned in together as they talked. And then, without looking back, without scanning the room, or even pretending to say goodbye, they walked out the door together. I stood there frozen, watching as the elevator doors closed behind them. My chest didn't explode in rage. My heart didn't shatter into cinematic pieces. It was worse than that. I just went still. That kind of still where everything feels like it's sliding into place, but not in a good way. Like when you realize you've been living inside a story someone else has been rewriting without your knowledge. I didn't follow them. Didn't cause a scene. I turned back to the bar, grabbed the champagne flute I'd left behind, and walked to the edge of the balcony. I stared down at the street lights, barely hearing the music behind me. And I knew, right there, in the middle of 100 well-dressed people and their carefully curated lives, I understood something that I hadn't dared admit before. Haley wasn't just tired or stressed or needing space. She was gone. Spiritually, emotionally. She had already left me. Tonight, she just stopped pretending. I left without saying goodbye to anyone. The drive from Chicago back to Milwaukee took just under 2 hours, but felt longer. I didn't turn on music. I didn't answer my phone. I just let my thoughts loop like a broken reel. Her hand on his arm, her laugh in his ear, that expression of ease on her face, as if nothing she was doing cost her anything. By the time I pulled into our driveway, the house looked foreign, like a place someone else lived in. The porch light was still on, casting this soft yellow glow over the snow-dusted shrubs. It should have felt warm. Instead, it looked staged like something out of catalog. The home of two people who smiled for pictures, but didn't speak in private. Inside, I didn't touch anything. I walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, closed it again. Sat at the table, stared at the fruit bowl. She insisted on keeping full even though neither of us ate enough fruit to justify it. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. I didn't check it. Eventually, I wandered upstairs and stood in the doorway of her bedroom. Her perfume still hung in the air. Her side of the bed, perfectly made. I didn't cry. I didn't punch a wall. I just stood there, staring at the proof of a life I no longer recognized. That night, I slept in the guest room. Not out of principle, not to make a point, but because I couldn't bear the idea of sleeping next to her, even in her absence. That bed, the one we'd bought together on a trip to Minneapolis, the one she insisted had to be firm but cloud soft, now felt like a lie. I laid awake until morning, and that's when it hit me. If she wanted to live as though she were free, then I'd let her. But freedom comes with consequences, and from now on, those consequences would be mine to decide. The Haley I married had slowly eroded. Whatever was left of her had made a choice, when I didn't get to vote on. So now it was my turn. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to plead. I was going to build a new set of rules. And if she thought she could just waltz back into our life like nothing had happened, she was in for a surprise. Because from this point on, everything she took for granted would come with conditions. Haley didn't come home that night, or the next. Not a text, not a call. Radio silence. By day 3, I stopped checking my phone. Whatever she was doing, or whoever she was doing it with, was her business now. Mine was setting the new terms of engagement. First, I shut down her access to our joint accounts. She'd always handled most of our day-to-day finances, groceries, utilities, her weekly yoga membership, brunches she liked to pretend were essential networking. I called the bank, removed her card privileges, and rerouted our direct deposits into a new personal account. I left exactly $62.13 in the joint one, enough to signal it wasn't an accident. Next came the credit cards. Canceled. Every last one of them. The Platinum she used to flash at salons. The travel rewards card we once used for weekend trips to Nashville or Denver. Gone. Just like the woman I thought I married. Then I called the insurance provider and took her off our health and auto plans. She had her own job, her own coverage. She'd made it clear she wanted to live independently. Great. She could start now. The locks were the final move. Changed all of them, front, back, garage. I even swapped the keypad code on the alarm system. That night, I slept like I hadn't in weeks. Not peacefully, but with purpose. 2 days later, I got the text. Mark, can we talk? I'm coming home tonight. Home. She still called it that. I didn't reply. I was in the living room when I heard her keys jiggle in the front door. Then again. Then harder. Nothing. A pause. Then a knock. A knock on her own front door. I let her stand out there for a minute before I opened it. She looked surprised. Maybe even hurt. She was in jeans and a sweater, face bare, her usual sharpness dulled by something unfamiliar. Vulnerability. Hey, she said quiet. I didn't answer. I stepped aside and let her walk in. She looked around like a tourist, like the furniture was staged, like she didn't know where to sit. What's going on? She asked. My cards aren't working. I couldn't get gas. And the insurance. My pharmacy said I'm not even covered anymore. I nodded slowly. Yeah, that's right. Seriously? Are you punishing me? I tilted my head. No, I'm updating the arrangement. You made it clear you wanted a different life. I'm just adjusting accordingly. Her jaw dropped slightly, like she couldn't believe I had the audacity to do exactly what she'd been doing in secret for months. Make unilateral decisions. I never said I wanted a different life, she whispered. I shrugged. Your actions did. She stood in the middle of the room, arms crossed, trying to figure out her next move. I didn't offer a seat. I didn't offer coffee. I just stood there. You can stay in the guest room, I said finally. But food, internet, transportation, that's on you. This house is no longer operating under automatic assumptions. Everything is conditional now. Conditional, she echoed, like it was a foreign word. Yeah, I said. Conditional on honesty, on respect, on showing up, not just physically but emotionally. You broke the contract, Haley. I'm rewriting it. She blinked hard, like she wanted to cry, but didn't want to give me the satisfaction. I made a mistake, she said, voice shaky. But I didn't leave you, Mark. You didn't stay either. She looked away. The silence stretched between us until it was unbearable. Then she turned and walked upstairs without another word. That night, she slept in the guest room. I could hear her pacing, opening and closing drawers, probably trying to figure out how much of her old life still fit in this new one. The next morning, she was already in the kitchen when I came down. She looked like hell. I grabbed coffee and said nothing. She tried to smile. I didn't return it. That became the rhythm. We existed like ghosts under the same roof. She stopped asking questions. Stopped pushing. I think she thought I'd cool off, that I'd reset, that we'd talk and things would snap back into place. But this wasn't a timeout. This was a reset. Over the next few days, she learned the new rules. No more shared calendars. No more dinners together. No more, can you grab me something while you're out? She was a guest now, a tolerated one, and only because I hadn't decided what came next. Trevor, it turned out, was married. I found that out through a mutual connection at work who asked me, very carefully, how I was holding up. Word had gotten around fast. I didn't ask for details. I didn't care about the office gossip. Let them whisper. Let Haley stew in the embarrassment. She didn't bring him up. Not once. But I could see it. The way her eyes dimmed when her phone stayed silent. The way she hovered by the window at night, like she was waiting for something that wasn't coming. This new version of her, quiet, deflated, wasn't the same woman who walked out of that restaurant in Chicago with a devil-may-care smirk and someone else's arm around her. No, this woman looked like she didn't know where she belonged anymore. And maybe that was the point. She'd been free to make her choice. Now, she was going to learn what freedom really costs. She didn't know about Trevor's wife. That much became clear in the days that followed. Haley had always prided herself on being in control of her career, her image, her emotions. But she hadn't seen this one coming. When I casually dropped the line, "I hear Trevor's wife is back from Boston." Over morning coffee, she blinked like someone slapped her. "He's married?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, not even looking up. "Has been. 2 kids. His youngest just turned 4. Cute age." She said nothing after that. Just sat there, staring at the countertop like she expected it to rearrange the past for her. Whatever fantasy she had built around him. And let's be real, it was a fantasy, collapsed in that moment. And I watched it crumble without a flicker of sympathy. The following week, she took a leave of absence from work. The official story was personal health reasons, but I knew better. Word had spread. Offices thrive on 2 things: spreadsheets and gossip. And Haley had become Exhibit A for both. At home, she moved like a shadow. I didn't have to enforce the new boundaries anymore. They enforced themselves. Her favorite cereal? Gone from the pantry. The Netflix account? Password changed. Her car's gas tank? Empty. I wasn't malicious. I just stepped away. Stepped out of the role of provider, husband, caretaker. She wanted to be independent. I let her. I remember walking into the kitchen one afternoon to find her staring at the wine rack. Her favorite bottle used to sit front and center. Malbec from Mendoza, always 2 bottles in stock. She looked over at me and asked quietly, "Did you stop buying it?" I shrugged. Didn't seem like I needed to anymore. She didn't argue, just nodded and walked away. That was the rhythm of her new reality. Subtle reminders that the comforts she once enjoyed were never automatic. They were built on trust, and that trust had been incinerated. The isolation didn't hit her all at once. It snuck in like fog, slow, disorienting. At first, she kept up the act. Mornings in the guest room, jogs around the block, even a few attempts at making conversation. But as the days dragged on, I could see it. The way she checked her phone less often, how she lingered in the kitchen just a little longer hoping I might start something. Anything. I didn't. We hadn't argued in weeks. Not because we were healing, but because the fight had been replaced by silence. And silence, I've learned, can be crueler than yelling. Her routines crumbled. She tried cooking dinner one night. Salmon, asparagus, lemon rice, all plated like we used to do on Fridays. I sat down, took one bite, and pushed my plate aside. "I already ate," I said. She didn't touch her own food, just sat across from me, fork resting on the edge of the plate, staring into nothing. I stood up and rinsed my dish. She stayed seated long after I left the room. That night, I heard her crying through the wall. I didn't go to her. It's strange. You think when someone betrays you, you'll want to hurt them back. You imagine grand gestures, revenge, shouting, packed bags on a lawn. But the real punishment? It's in the absence. The slow erosion of presence. Watching someone unravel without lifting a finger. That's where she was now, unraveling. She called her sister one afternoon. I heard her voice through the door, low and tense. "No, I'm still here, no. He hasn't said anything. It's like I don't exist." And that was the cruelest part of it all. I had existed for years. I had been the steady hand, the fallback plan, the man who fixed broken sinks and remembered her mom's birthday. And now, she wanted me back in orbit, not out of love, but out of fear. I started spending more time away. I'd leave early, return late. Sometimes I'd go to the gym just to kill time. Other nights, I'd sit in my car with the engine running and a podcast playing, not really listening, just waiting until the house felt empty enough to walk back into. I didn't know her my time. Not anymore. One morning, I came down to find her sitting on the porch in an old hoodie, her knees tucked up, coffee untouched beside her. She didn't look at me when I passed, but as I opened the door, she said, quietly, "I miss who we were." I didn't respond. I just stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Because the truth was, I missed that version too. But he didn't live here anymore. Neither did she. Weeks passed. The silence, once empowering, had become something heavier. Not guilt. Not yet. But a pressure that built with every quiet morning and unacknowledged night. Haley began to change. Not in the way you hope for, like someone finally waking up to the damage they caused, but in the way someone does when they realize they've lost their grip on the narrative. She started picking fights again. Subtle at first. Passive comments. "I guess it's nice not having to care what I eat anymore." Or, "You always said I needed to be more independent." Congrats. Then came the questions disguised as accusations. "Do you even care where I go anymore? Are you seeing someone? Is this what you wanted, to punish me?" I didn't engage. I kept conversations short. Businesslike. "Bills are paid through the end of the month. I'll be out Thursday night. Please don't touch my mail." But she didn't want information. She wanted a reaction, and I wouldn't give it to her. One evening, I came home to find the dining table cleared off, two place settings arranged like something out of Better Home spread, a roast in the oven, candles lit, even a bottle of wine, her wine, back on the counter. I stared at it, confused. She walked in from the kitchen, apron on, hair tied back. "Trying. Clearly trying." "I made dinner," she said. "I thought maybe we could talk." I stood there for a moment, then slowly sat down. Not out of mercy, but curiosity. I want to know what this version of her was about. Was it remorse or desperation? She served me quietly. No sarcasm, no commentary, just silence. I ate. It was good. She barely touched her food. After a while, she broke it. "Do you hate me?" I looked up, met her eyes. "No," I said. "I don't hate you." "Then what is this?" she asked, gesturing at the space between us. "What are we doing?" I set down my fork and leaned back in a chair. "We're living in the consequence," I said. "You crossed the line, Haley, and whether or not you regret it, the damage is done." Her face broke for a second, just long enough to see it. The flicker of realization that this wasn't going to be fixed with wine and roast chicken. "I was scared," she said suddenly, her voice cracking. "That night in Chicago, I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't planning anything. He made me feel noticed. And I didn't think. I swear, I didn't think it would turn into anything." I nodded slowly, and yet it did. She looked down at her hands. "I thought, maybe if I didn't say anything, it wouldn't be real." "But it was," I replied. "It is." Silence fell again. Not cold this time, just heavy. I could see her struggling, try to recalibrate. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," she said finally. "I know I don't deserve that. But I'm asking you to see me. To see that I'm here. That I'm trying." That was the first time I saw something honest in her. Past the defensiveness, past the performance. A sliver of actual reckoning. Later that night, she joined me on the porch. I was sitting in the worn-out Adirondack chair, sipping a beer, watching the neighbors' sprinklers pop on in the dusk light. She didn't say anything at first, just sat beside me, not reaching, not demanding, just present. And for the first time since it all blew up, we existed in the same space without either of us trying to control it. I don't know how long we sat there. Could have been minutes, could have been an hour. Time felt slower under that porch light. Eventually, she spoke. "I don't expect to get us back," she said, "but I want to start somewhere." I didn't respond. I just nodded once, slowly. Not agreement, not hope, just acknowledgement. And that was the beginning of something I hadn't anticipated. Not reconciliation, but maybe contact. She stopped picking fights after that. She stopped sulking, stopped the cryptic comments and emotional landmines. She started doing small things instead. Taking out the trash, cleaning up the kitchen, replacing the toothpaste I liked without asking. At first, I thought it was a strategy. Guilt tactics. But there was no begging, no manipulation. Just quiet actions. One night, I noticed she'd started making her own grocery list. Not touching mine. Not assuming anything. And when she asked, genuinely asked, "Do you mind if I use the laundry machine tomorrow?" I realized the power dynamic had shifted. Not back to what it was. Not to dominance. But to something more measured. Something new. She was learning. Slowly. And I was watching, not waiting for failure, but observing whether the change was real. Because forgiveness doesn't come when someone asks for it. It comes when they stop expecting it. It didn't happen all at once. There was no grand apology, no breakdown moment where Haley clutched my arm and begged for a second chance. If anything, the shift came in quiet moments, tiny, almost invisible changes that over time added up to something I couldn't ignore. It started with breakfast. She made it one morning, nothing fancy, just eggs and toast, but she didn't announce it or try to spin it into some kind of olive branch. I came downstairs, half asleep, and there it was on the table. A plate of folded napkin, a cup of coffee poured just the way I like it. She was already in the other room, not watching, not waiting for a reaction, like she'd finally understood something. That real effort doesn't come with strings attached. That was the first time I didn't feel the need to retreat. A few days later, she knocked before coming into the office. Just a small knock, but it meant something. For weeks, she'd wandered in like a ghost, looking for reasons to linger or lash out. Now, she was treating space like it mattered again. We weren't suddenly laughing or watching movies together or reminiscing about the past. This wasn't some Hollywood montage of healing. It was slower, more grounded. A word here, a gesture there. Not romantic, human. She asked about my day, not out of habit, but with actual interest. She refilled the Brita, picked up a package off the porch, and left it by my desk with a quiet, "Hey, this came." These were the things that had once been normal, but now they felt earned. She didn't expect praise. She just did them. One night, I came home to find the garage swept clean. I hadn't mentioned it. I hadn't hinted. But for the first time in forever, she'd done something that wasn't about her. No payoff. No audience. Just effort. Still, I kept my distance. Not out of resentment, but caution. I'd seen the version of her that could lie with a smile and keep secrets buried behind perfect makeup and good intentions. So I wasn't going to be won over by domestic chores or soft-spoken apologies. But I could admit something was changing. She started talking about going back to work. Carefully. I'm thinking of asking for a meeting with HR. Not to go back right away, just to talk. I nodded but said nothing. I could see the nerves behind her eyes, like even bringing it up felt like trespassing on a life she used to own. A few days later, she followed through. Scheduled a conversation. Didn't ask me to drive her, or sit with her, or celebrate it afterward. Just left quietly in the morning and returned without fanfare. I met with them, she said, setting her bag down. I'll be easing in. Half days next week, then we'll see. I could have said something supportive. I didn't, but I didn't dismiss it either. And that small silence between us, once filled with suspicion or indifference, now felt like mutual restraint. We were moving carefully, like people walking across a frozen lake, not sure how thick the ice was underfoot. One night, we sat on the back patio, me with a beer, her with tea. The air was cool, the kind of Midwest evening that hinted at fall coming soon. She didn't try to fill the silence. She just watched the sky, and for once, I didn't feel the need to leave first. She broke the quiet. "Do you think I'm different now?" I turned toward her. Not annoyed, not defensive, just curious. "What do you mean? I mean, does it show?" "I'm trying." She wasn't fishing. There was no desperation in her voice. Just honesty. Maybe the first true moment of it in months. "Trying," I repeated. "Yes. Different?" "Not sure yet." She nodded like she expected that. Like she respected it. That's when I knew we'd turned some kind of corner. Not a finish line. Not a return. But a bend in the road. It was the first time I didn't feel like I had to protect myself from her. And maybe the first time she didn't feel like she had to protect herself from me. There was still distance. Still damage. But for the first time, we weren't fighting over who was right or who hurt more. We were just there, trying.